upfront and guilty of that. So
You need to tell me what you prefer. Like you, or with the others, what we've done is,
yeah.
as people are going, we've asked questions to clarify, or as
No,
questions
look,
come in
that's
from
fine.
your
Yeah,
end.
we'll keep it informal. But I know I have a lot of content, so I'll be probably going very fast through some, and I might have to skip through others depending on how we go.
Yeah, perfect. So
If that's fine, but yeah,
you'll have approximately 40 minutes, a bit over 40 minutes, and
40 minutes.
then question time, and then we do the changeover to the next speaker.
Oh, okay. So I thought, is it 40 minutes of my talk and then 30 to 40 minutes and then Q&A after that, or?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah, yeah. So a total of 50 minutes or so, right? 50.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's fine.
And I'll let you know, I'll send you a private message through Zoom to let you know when there's about 5 or, depending on where we are, 5 or 10 minutes left, so that
Sure.
you know in
Yeah.
terms of timing. And aside from that, we will, in a second, when we just finish this conversation, we'll drop this into the Facebook, the Superhuman Summit group. So we do it through a live stream,
Yep.
drop it in through a live stream.
Sure.
And what else do I have to tell you? I've done this so many times, but right now I can't think of anything else. So have you watched any of the other speakers at all?
I have. I've watched a bit of yours and AJ's, and unfortunately, it's just been such a busy week. I've had so many things going on this week.
Yeah, it's tricky sometimes. If you don't forget, you can go back into the Superhuman Summit group, and they're all there. All the recordings are there under videos.
That's what I plan to do for sure. Yep, I've got that on my list of things to do. So yeah.
Okay, fantastic. So we've got some people jumping on already. There's about 6 or 7 people listening to our conversation as we speak. So what I want you to do is just to unshare your screen back so that it's just the two of us on the screen initially.
Okay. Yep, sure. So stop share.
And I will put us into the live stream. That'll take me just a couple of minutes. Mm-hmm. So it's a busy day today. Lots of it is. There's lots of people on today. We wanted to do that because it's the weekend and more people can watch.
That's right. Yeah.
We've learned a lot about running summits because we've never done it before. So
I'm sure. Oh, it's been exponential learning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, we're probably live in a couple of seconds.
Can I share my screen now, or you want me to?
Just give me a sec. Let me do your intro.
Okay, yeah,
before you share your screen.
Yep, that's fine.
Okay, we are live. Hello, everyone in Facebook land and Zoom land and any other lands that might be joining us today. And we would like to have a massive welcome for Anuraj Gambhir. And he is going to be sharing with us today on exponential consciousness. So if your brain is not already sore, we promise it will be by the end of this session in the best possible way. And he has been watching a couple of other presenters, so he has a bit of an idea of what people have been talking about across the summit. He's coming to us from Sydney, and he will share much more about himself as we go along. But if it's your first time and you haven't been on one of our sessions yet during the Superhuman Summit, please feel free to make this as interactive as you possibly would like to. Anyone who's jumping on, we've got Yvonne, Faith, Julianne, Mahoob, Nicole, Susan and Wayne so far, and growing by the second. So feel free to drop into the chat box, tell us where you're coming in from, what country, what location, etc. And also tell us what you're looking forward to about this talk, because I'm really interested in why other people are interested in consciousness as a topic. So go ahead and drop those things down into the chat box. And for those of you who are in the Facebook live stream, a big hello to you. Same thing. Please feel free to comment, agree, disagree, ask questions, whatever you need to do as we're going through the process. And without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Anuraj, and I think he's going to share his screen first up. So welcome and enjoy.
Thank you so much, Michelle. I hope you can see my screen there.
Yes, we can. It's perfect.
Yes. Okay. So I think firstly, what a phenomenal event you put together. It is such a pleasure to be part of it. So I'll be covering quite a few broad topics in this space of exponential consciousness, going into exponential technologies and exponential mindsets and so forth. So I'll get started. I do have quite a few slides, so I just wanted to mention that beforehand. So we'll start with, obviously, we've been living in this VUCA world. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the term VUCA, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. But the pace of VUCA has just phenomenally accelerated, as we all know. I wanted to actually just briefly mention three terms I'd coined over 3 decades of my career. And they're kind of, I call them exponential terms or buzzwords. And the first one is simplexity, which is complex made simple. And the second one is collaboration, which is open collaborative innovation. And the third one is experiential. Over the last 5-6 years ago, I came up with that, which is immersive experiential story showing, moving from passive storytelling to immersive story showing. But I'll be referring to them and I can go deeper into those later. Some of the other key trends we've obviously been observing is the hyper-connected world of empowered customers. Even Time magazine awarded us, we, the person of the year back in 2007. So we've seen the industrial revolutions obviously make quite a mark on the planet, from mechanization to electrification and mass production to automation and computer revolution. We're going much deeper into the 4th industrial revolution, which is really the convergence and fusion of exponential technologies such as IoT, artificial intelligence, big data, analytics, cloud, blockchain, robotics. Basically, we're augmenting intelligence across the board. So this is Gartner's emerging technology hype cycle. And I just wanted to kind of point out that many technologies have been crossing the chasm much more rapidly than we expected. And we've seen that mass acceptance and democratization of that happen with examples like in AR and VR, and looking at sort of AI, which artificial intelligence, whilst we talk about AGI, which is, shown here, and AGI is artificial general intelligence, is still work in progress, obviously heading towards what we call technological singularity, as my fellow colleague at Singularity U and founder, Ray Kurzweil, talks about and predicts by 2045 for that to happen, whilst by 2029, he talks about computers will have high-level intelligence. So just to give a bit of a slice of pace of change here, we can see in 1900 in Fifth Avenue, New York, the horse and cart was replaced by the motor car in just 13 years. And to just some foundation and basic elements about exponentials, I think it's even the layman today understands the law of exponentials. But we talk about moving from a deception phase to a disruptive phase. And we're essentially talking about a doubling on a logarithmic scale here. So just as a quick example, if we take 30 1-meter steps, we've traveled 30 meters. But if I ask you to travel 30 exponential steps in doubling, how much would you have traveled? Any guesses there?
No one's guessing so far.
Yeah, why don't you give a guess, Michelle?
Yeah, I wouldn't have a clue.
Okay, well, I'll tell you, it's actually, you would have traveled 26 times around the world. So it's 1 billion meters or 1 million kilometers, over 1 billion kilometers.
Wow.
It's phenomenal. So that's what we're really seeing, that human development has been exponential and global over the time. It's no longer about creating ecosystems, it's about curating them. And these are just examples of industries I've worked very much in my career, in the telecom, media, internet and IT and sort of space. We're seeing transformation happen. So I do a lot of work in education, ed tech, and health tech. So I'm giving a couple of examples of that. And we're seeing that transformation happening in education and learning, which is massive shifts from the flipped classroom, from the number of MOOCs, which are massively online open courses, you know, the online education, which is obviously transforming so rapidly right now.
Yeah, I think it's been really interesting to watch the whole schooling system. And I really do have a lot of empathy for teachers who have been dragged through a 5 or a 10-year change process in a matter of weeks to make everything online. But I actually think it's really going to be a really good outcome of the experience that we're having.
Totally. I think it's no longer about a sage on the stage anymore. It's about being a guide on the side. And that's what I think this whole phenomenon is happening. And I've been actually, as faculty over the last decade with many different business schools and institutes, been sort of practicing that as really, where, you know, students are learning everything outside or at home and outside the classroom, and come in and really to discuss and collaborate on solving key problems and doing real world case studies and so forth. And so this is actually also an example of one of the business schools I was teaching at, which is the SP Jain Business School. And we have a global EMBA program there. And we have a campus in Mumbai, in Singapore, Dubai, and Sydney. And here's actually an example of what we had as a full dashboard. And a teacher or the faculty could have a dashboard of vitals of each student. We use video analytics there and artificial intelligence for classroom automation. So there's a lot happening in this space with engaged learning. And even with children, we're really seeing that transformation happening from STEM, as we know, to something what I call STEAM further, which is entrepreneurship, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics.
And I think the addition of entrepreneurship is very strategic and very important moving forward. There's people in the chat box just saying that they can totally relate to the fourth revolution and the idea of the guide on the side versus a teacher.
Yeah, wonderful. That's great. So, sorry, just trying to. So, and the other one, which is in healthcare, we talk about health is the true wealth, and health in your hands or at your fingertips. Really, it's the democratization of that, which has happened so immensely. And I'll be giving through many examples of that. So we've seen that shift happen in healthcare from diagnostic to preventative. And it's really from sick care to true healthcare, and something which I really like somebody else talking about, self-care, which is really quite interesting. So I've been doing a lot of work in smart cities and various projects I've been doing over the last few years, including setting up or establishing of an innovation precinct in Hong Kong, China, called the Greater Bay Area. In fact, it's one of the largest in the world. And we really looked at smart cities from a very human-centric perspective. The other big project I've been involved with as a conceptualization at a very early phase that we're still ideating on is a Smart Futures one, a micro smart city, a floating smart city in Tasmania on the Derwent River in the catchment of Hobart. And
so city in the Derwent River.
Well, I think it's a great test example, because what we're really merging is nature with humanity and smart city thinking, where we really bring together this whole aspect of domains which are powering a city, you know. So really about stitching through much more empathetic ends of communities, because I think it's a very interesting aspect of community that we talk about in bringing together the transportation sector and the healthcare and education and so forth. So
Absolutely.
we're seeing so much data being generated that, you know, a clutter of information out there. It's about, we're drowning in information, but starve for knowledge. And we're seeing that clutter, that transformation of valuable knowledge that needs to occur from big data to big insights and you really need to take big actions. Otherwise it means nothing. Only then you really get the true wisdom out of it.
And we were only just talking about that in the last an earlier presentation today, where someone was presenting on health and all different approaches to health. And we were talking about how, as a consumer, as a customer, or as someone who is expected to get on board with those changes, it's really difficult to discern what's quality information, what's not quality information, who do you trust, who do you not trust, where does that source come from, you know?
Very true, very true. So in fact, yeah, it's that space where we're moving from, we're actually generating over 2.5 exabytes of data every single day. And it's because of the fusion of technologies and the And there's an interesting saying that data is the new oil, AI is the new electricity, and IoT is the new nervous system. And we really need to evolve from descriptive to diagnostic to predictive to prescriptive analytics. And there's some really interesting examples of that, but interest of time, I won't go into that at the moment. So the space I do a lot of work in is wearables, actually, wearable technologies. And they've really evolved much beyond fitness trackers. I'm sure many people have got different types of wearables they've been experiencing or experimenting with. And there are so many more beyond the simple wrist-worn devices. There's a whole range which have been adding a lot of value from head to toe. It's a very wide landscape, from medical, wellness, fashion, sports. You look at security, for example. And I'm just going to pick a little bit selective ones on the healthcare sort of space there. And in fact, I've been involved with a new movement that we've created or curated. It's a manifestation of new age smart devices, where we talk about an exponential reinvention, and we call it Where to Able, which sits at the intersection of technology and humanity. And at Singularity U Australia, we've really been promoting this as a key session. And I was very fortunate to deliver that as a wearable tech parade and fashion show at our SU Summit here in Australia. And just a couple of months ago in Costa Rica, which was also quite interesting as a full fashion parade there.
And out of interest, how is that being received by people? The increasing variety of wearables and through all the markets that you're talking about.
Yeah, I think it's changing, because there are a lot more meaningful wearables, and that's what I'm going to dwell actually next into, because at the moment there has obviously Fitbit and so forth, and I think the first phase we've seen, there has been a kind of a clutter, and wearables haven't really evolved to that level until more recently, where we're getting a lot more meaningful data out of them, and for them to really help us with our so many aspects of our lives, actually. And that's what I'll be talking very much about next. So here's an example of a company called Goki, which has a very low cost wristband wearable. But what they've actually created as their key differentiator is a curated ecosystem, one which is really hyper personalized around well-being. And it actually involves real doctors, nutritionists, fitness coaches, and all of that accessible from your app or your really at your fingertips or on the wrist. So it's a very interesting sort of space there. We're seeing new platforms like this emerge, which are more meaningful to give a total solution there. So here's
sorry, I've got a question on the previous slide.
Sure, please.
I just saw the word karma. What does it mean in that context?
Well, karma is actually, obviously, it's karma points that Goki gives, and they're talking about giving it back to society. So kind of even pay it forward. So every time you're doing an exercise, and I think we've seen some phenomenal things. In fact, the colonel from London, I'm sure you've seen in the news recently, who raised 54 million Aussie dollars or so just by walking up and down. And I mean, that's what, if he was wearing a wearable like that, he would have gained so many karma points, I think, which he did anyway. So it's really about, connecting it with society in a lot more meaningful way.
Yeah.
This one is actually called Nadi X, and it's smart yoga tights. It monitors your movements to help you correct your yoga posture and trains you to new poses. So it's another very interesting sort of wearable by Aussie co-founder of the company Wearable X, and Nadi Tights. Recommend people to have a look at that. And now this one actually is called the Tesla suit, and it's really a very, very powerful solution, because it's a fusion of exponential technologies. It's contextual full body haptics with virtual reality as a wearable. It has sensors all over like an exoskeleton. It does motion capture, biometrics, haptics, all integrated to create new experiences. And you can even sort of recreate muscle memory. So we were very fortunate to have these folks in Australia actually at our Singularity U Summit, and it was a very big hit as a very, very, very unique solution. I've got a quick sort of a video of their solution there. I don't know if it's really playing properly, but I'll just play it for a few seconds. So you can even actually simulate different environments, heat and cold, for example, in there. It's being used for firefighter training, or in so many enterprise applications which are out there. And of course, in gaming and with virtual reality, you can immerse into a whole new reality. So in fact, at CES this year, they showcased a haptic glove, which is very interesting. It actually is creating with air pouches into your fingertips, a very immersive feeling. So we've got pretty much the whole body covered there with this solution. Next, I just wanted to mention, I was very honored to be at the launch of this really interesting concept car called AVTR, or Avatar, by Mercedes-Benz in collaboration with James Cameron, who's of course produced Avatar, as you know. And this was at CES 2020 in Vegas this year, on in fact the 9th of January, that they had this mega launch. And it's a realization of what holistic well-being can look like in a full autonomous future, with mood, stress analytics, adaptive UI, integrating spirituality and the natural environment, vegan materials, full health vitals, virtual personalized landscapes seamlessly projected in the interior of the vehicle. And so I tell you that you can really imagine a personal spa oasis in an autonomous vehicle.
Is that a flying or a driving?
Well, it's a driving. It's an autonomous car. So you can see me sitting in that at the bottom right in the vehicle. I was very fortunate to have a personal preview of that. And I think the journey really becomes a retreat. It's a concept which I'd been working on quite a long back. We came up with at a BP Castrol session. And I was just amazed to see part of it realized in this form. So I see that, how kind of consciousness has been adapted in the automobility space. It's really interesting.
It's fascinating, isn't it?
And you could adapt this for a flying car also. And that's obviously a very big trend that's happening in future of transportation. So in fact, I had a quick video of the launch as an amateur video that I took from my cell phone. You can see it there. It was just phenomenal when it came out and launched by James Cameron and the chairman of Mercedes-Benz. Very fortunate to be sitting close to Steve Wozniak.
When you say it's a release, does that mean that that's now on the market?
No, it's not on the market. It's a concept car. It's really a showcase for the future. So I think the concept cars are really used as a glimpse of what the future could come about, and I think to showcase key technologies in there, which is what they've done in there. In fact, it's a concept that I adapted in the mobile phone industry, which is my background. And we worked closely when I was heading innovation for Siemens. We brought in the concept, terminology to look at how do you showcase technology as a foresight and something which is way ahead of its time now, so that you can actually work out and map out the future much faster. So future is really there. I think it's just not evenly distributed, as a beautiful saying that William talks about. So I wanted to come back to some more devices and technologies, which are actually, these ones are very much available in the market. And this one is called Skio by Consumer Physics. So I can ask you to imagine an electron microscope, which costs tens of thousands of dollars, is democratized at your palm for $1,200. I've actually got that device right here. And if I point that to an apple or a fruit, it actually gives me detailed nutrition information. So it can actually tell me, it can scan the food, the fruit, dairy, meat even, or vegetables, and tell me the freshness of it in a way, the fat, carbohydrate content, and you can track your body fat percentage even, and even recognize painkillers or paracetamols with that.
So do you use that when you go shopping?
Well, a little bit actually. I use it more for my demos and my showcases and all. But yeah, I mean, I have used it in real life. In fact, I would have been happy to do a demo, but in the interest of time, I've normally done that online actually with an Apple and shown the level. If there's time at the end, I might even quickly do that. We'll see how we go.
Saying, wow, love it.
So the next one I wanted to talk about was clinical grade wearables and devices. And this is where I was saying that wearables have really evolved, from the current or what people are used to in the previous sense. And imagine a tricorder from Star Trek at your fingertips. And that's what this device in the center, which is actually called Medical Center. It's a concept device. And in fact, I have that device right here in front of me. It does blood pressure, blood glucose, body fat, body temperature, oxygen saturation, heart rate variability, which is a good indication of physiological stress, all measurable in one device.
So is this how they're talking about healthcare of the future? Basically, if we imagine that every individual would have something like this,
Yep.
and they would be able to upload their data and the information straight into the internet, which would allow them to go through a diagnostic process.
Exactly. So they could do self-analysis, obviously. So there's a thing called fog or edge analytics, which will enable you to do it on the device, but you can actually upload it to the cloud, share it with your doctor. And there's so much data there that is meaningful now between doctors' visits, for example, that you can, look at and derive a very interesting prescriptive approach to your overall holistic health in there.
Absolutely, and it will totally change the nature of the doctor's contribution to helping support the patient get well as well.
Exactly. Now, the next device after that was actually the smartwatch. So this, for example, right now, it's got my blood pressure. It does blood pressure on the wrist and using PPG, using a light. And that's the one I'm showing there in the screen. It's called Life Band. And it's a smartwatch which does your heart health quantification. So it measures stress, mood, heart age even. So I can scroll through. In fact, happy to kind of show a quick look at
if you don't mind, while you're looking at that, there's a couple of questions. Are you happy to take a couple of questions? So someone's saying, where can we learn more Medical Centre?
Okay, so I've actually just published an article on this late last night, which was my kind of gift for the SuperHuman Summit also. And I wanted to get it out. So it was very late last night. I put it on my LinkedIn, and I will talk about that in a few minutes so you can read a bit more about it.
Would you mind dropping it into the SuperHuman group for us as well?
Yeah, sure, I will. I'll do that.
Yeah. And then someone else just saying, this guy's amazing. So I thought you might want to know that you're amazing.
Oh, no, thank you. I'll be covering a lot of information. As I said, I've got a lot of slides here, so let me pace ahead because, I'm kind of competing with a fellow colleague of mine. His name is Dr. Daniel Kraft, and he's got the highest density of information he shares, which co-founder Peter Diamandis says.
Highest density of information competition. I like that one.
Exactly. That's right. Number of slides, yeah. So the next, variable that I'm talking about here is BioConnected. It's actually an Aussie startup which I've been mentoring, and Dr. Sven Rees, who's the founder of that, he's a sports scientist, and it's a smart hearable. I've got it right here actually, and this device is a Bluetooth stereo buds which provides in-ear coaching with heart rate variability. So it measures your stress levels. It helps you improve sports performance, giving you feedback on your fitness, and even customizes routines for you using AI, and actually has an AI guiding you to motivate you while you're, say, cycling. So I've used it while I've cycled 51 kilometers over the M7 route several months ago, and I found it really phenomenal. So one I could recommend there. Another device is actually an Irish company called PIP, and I've got this device here, which is actually measuring stress using your perspiration, something called electrodermal activity or galvanic skin response. So it gives you biofeedback based on that, and it actually has a very nice visual game to reduce your stress levels. The next one is actually called iTens, which is a FDA-approved wearable pain relief solution. And it's a modern day electrotherapy sort of a device with TENS therapy. So I'm sure people might be familiar with TENS to a level. So it's something which makes it very easy to wear and put on various parts of your body. Now here is actually another startup I've been mentoring called Blisspot, which is really doing some amazing work in collating a very strong ecosystem as a double-sided marketplace. It's a holistic wellness platform combining education, technology, community to support individuals with optimum well-being. So, and it's all very much about mindfulness as we talk about, because yesterday is a history, tomorrow is mystery, and today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. So, I think it's about living in the moment, isn't it?
Absolutely.
And so one of the startups I was mentoring at our global startup program at Singularity U in Silicon Valley was called Wellify, and they had something called the Health Map, which we came up with. And in this case, what we would do is we actually would help you visualize what you could look like if you did not take the right actions. And we had a very holistic view of your fitness, sleep, nutrition, genomic data even in there. and giving you nudges using your wearables. So it's something which has been very, very interesting to actually tinker with and experiment and build a prototype of. But a company which has realized some of this in the mainstream is called Shea, and they have a virtual health assistant with the Precision Health AI, and it's really helping you with personalized, preventative, intuitive, interactive solutions to deploy some of these things.
So
With
we've got. Sorry, are you finished?
yeah, sure, yeah.
Yeah, we've just got another question that someone's asking.
Sure.
So the question is there a readily I can't even read anymore. Is there a readily available device that accurately takes breathing rate or quality, looking for something like this for breathing training?
For breathing training, okay, that's a good question. I've heard of a couple of devices which are doing breath analysis, and I mean you could do that with more simulated parameters that I've seen with the Aura Ring, for example, with even something which helps you with controlling and improving your breathing practice, which I'll be talking shortly about, is HeartMath, which is this device, the Inner Balance. But to measure breathing, it's I haven't really come across something, to be frank, as a standalone device in that space.
There you go. Maybe there's a startup there for that person who asked that question.
For sure, yeah, because it's a very important area. And I mean, we can look at oxygen saturation, so it gives you sort of breathing parameters, and that I can actually even measure here with the wearable on my wrist. So there are elements there, but I think to go deeper into it,
all being brought together, yeah, in one device.
Totally agree, yeah. So as I said, late last night, I've actually posted a tech tool guide on LinkedIn, which I will certainly share with you on the SuperHuman, area there, so that everybody can access that. So I wanted to next talk about quickly the media evolution. You know, we've evolved from the lean back couch potato mode of watching television into a more immersive computer interactive mode, into something a lot more immersive now, and that's Media 3.0, which is moved from the Nintendo Wii into things like augmented and virtual reality that we very much dwelling very deep into with so many examples. And it's something what I call moving from the GUI to the NUI, from the graphical to the natural user interface. So we've really seen this interesting aspects of augmented reality, and on the other end, virtual reality, and both kind of coming together to provide a mixed or extended reality approach, which is very powerful. And I think that's what this we talk about in the virtuality continuum by Milgram, which is nicely depicted here in these images. Now, it was just interesting. Just yesterday, early morning, one of our key distinguished faculty members, David Roberts, was speaking at a VR summit, which my fellow colleagues from Singularity U South Africa had put together, and he remarked very strongly about VR will disrupt reality, because there are so many things we'll be able to do in the virtual world we cannot do in the real world. And it is very profound there, that sort of, because what he experienced 30 years ago with the formation of the World Wide Web, where he was actually with the founder.
But you might get the phenomena that if people can do things in virtual reality, they start to believe they can do it in normal reality, and then maybe they'll be able to do more.
I know, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Yeah, exactly. But I think what AR and VR is really helping us is with learning, with so many elements that involve me and I will learn. It's really about that interactive, immersive media. And for example, I've got this device, the Oculus Quest here, which is one of the latest devices we've been playing with as SU faculty in Australia. And we're trying out new experiences with VR. And I think it's come a long way with what it was just a few years ago in terms of VR solutions. In fact, a few years ago, when I was speaking at an event at Vivid in Australia in 2012, at Cross Media Lab, there was a startup which I ended up mentoring, and I really worked very closely with them. We were making a film called Stand in My Shoes on the global empathy deficit. And the founder of that, Anna Rees, she actually pivoted that whole thing. We couldn't raise enough capital for the film because we had some amazing ideas there, but it actually pivoted to a VR project. And really interesting, because VR is really such a deep empathy tool. So another startup in VR I just wanted to mention in this space of holistic well-being, which I've been very closely involved with the founding and the mentoring of, and we moved them now from Sydney to Silicon Valley, called Relax VR, which is a deeply immersive relaxation experience using virtual reality and meditation So it combines global landscapes and high resolution multimedia and guided meditations with soothing music on there. So you could sort of toggle between different modes, and it's really, and there are many other sort of examples of VR which are Calm and Headspace and so forth, also looking at these immersive media areas, and one called Trip, which I've been recently playing with in the Oculus Quest here.
I've heard
So we see this.
some, I don't know where I heard this, whether it was in Peter Singh's presentation or at a different, from a different
Yeah.
source, I can't remember, but someone was talking about VR in relation to the elderly and people stuck in old people's homes, and helping them to feel like they're traveling and having all these adventures. And do you
That's a
know
company
about that?
called Nomad VR. In fact, I talk about them in my toolkit also. So Nomad VR is actually one I was mentoring last year at Remarkable Accelerator here.
That's
And
them. Yeah.
people, elderly people, even people could be suffering from dementia or Alzheimer's, to experience and to really have their bucket list ticked off potentially. So to travel to places or do things which, because of their lack of ability potentially, or people with disability, for example, can do
Yeah.
some things in this
Yeah.
space. So, yeah.
Quick question before you keep continuing.
Yep.
What are some of the dangers that you see in the AR VR world, and how can we be careful?
The dangers. Okay, I think obviously every technology has its dangers and disadvantages and advantages, but I think it's like anything, you don't want to get too carried away. And I think if people have seen that movie called Ready Player One, or looked at aspects where if you get so immersed into it, like there are some gamers who get so addicted, and it's like any technology. If you go overboard, it could sort of change you psychologically. I mean, there are obviously impact there because it has such a deep impact on neuroplasticity, and that's why I would also recommend you don't get very small children to spend too much time on VR or AR, for example. Well, AR I think is different slightly because we're augmenting more information there, but in VR, because you're in an entirely virtual world, you want to be, sort of. It's like
just so people understand, what's the technical definition of AR versus VR? Like, where does one start and one stop?
Sure, yeah. So augmented reality is when you've really got, you've got something in the real world and you're augmenting it, you're adding something further. So with my phone, for example, I'm actually pointing it to something, and I'm actually got some further information being augmented on top of it. Whereas in virtual reality, you're actually in a virtual world, and you could add further components of real world into it. So it's the two ends really. And when they both converge, we have things called mixed reality, which is where HoloLens and Magic Leap and some of these companies are actually providing solutions in. And what I've got on the screen right now is actually like a holographic image, which is really a mix of the virtual and augmented sort of world. And that's the next phase in what we talk about in storytelling, where we've kind of done a 360, because we're coming back to that aspect of higher psychological spatial connection, in that sort of level. And it's been quite interesting, sort of where these worlds collide. And yeah, there are so many examples, but I won't go into that right now. I've got many slides I actually could have shown on AR VR, but so humograms is something which is a augmented reality holographic technology. We even had Professor Stephen Hawking at the Sydney Opera House do a talk as a hologram 4 years ago, which was quite interesting. And then it's going to be really about a lot more about, more people than, technology. So I think it's getting closer to a lot more human-driven solutions in that regard, with holographic and mixed reality perspectives, because we do need the real world, and yet we can augment it with so much intelligence from the virtual world, is kind of where I'm saying. So the next section I quickly wanted to talk about is mind sensors, which is a space of my deep interest, which is something called the brain-computer interface, where we talk about electroencephalography. The biosensor and companies called Neurosky and Mindplay have done some phenomenal work in this space. And I've been working closely with them on many applications in this space, especially in health and wellness sort of domain. So we've seen a breakthrough happen because the price has dropped down dramatically. And we've seen devices like the Neurosky Mindwave Mobile, which I'm holding right here, is come down to sub $100 US, democratized from tens of thousands of dollars, which it was years back. So basically, you're connecting to your prefrontal cortex just on your forehead, and you're able to measure, with EEG brain waves, basically electrical current coming from your brain waves, your attention or focus versus meditation or relaxation. And if you're able to get both of these together, this is actually a snapshot of a visual of live EEG, and it's one of the demos I normally give. And if you're able to get attention and focus and meditation, relaxation together, you really get into the zone, or what we call the flow state, as people, refer to. So there's a lot of correlation there with, neuroscience, with technology that we can bring in as a very meaningful application for us in a holistic manner. In fact, Neurosky, we even had a game with Star Wars franchise. So the power of, your mind.
Can I just quickly ask you a question? Someone's
Sure.
asked a question about where does this cross the line for personal privacy?
Well, as long as you're, keeping all the technology and the data within control, it's up to you really what you want to share in general. But of course, there are so many apps out there, and I think the same as we've seen with social media. If you're, allowing them to get your information or being able to collate it, there can be breaches, of course, and it really depends what level of information you want to share and where you draw the line. So, for example, what I've got here is standalone. I'm not really sharing that on a cloud or something. If I'm collecting data here, I'm just doing it as a local demo or experience right here. Whereas there are, some devices, I'll just talk about them in the next few slides, like Muse, which I'm coming to, which are obviously, mainstream devices, and they have apps, and they can be collecting some of the information of yours, of your brain waves in there. So yeah, I think it is an interesting question for sure to ponder on.
And I think something, because obviously there's a lot of concern around, ethics and are we losing our humanity and those kind of questions in the tech world. And I think one thing that needs to be really emphasized, which you've just alluded to, is it's actually the data that's the issue, because it's what happens to the data, who buys the data. The data is where all the leverage is. The data is where the commercial value is.
Exactly.
And when you start playing that world of big data, that's really where all those questions need to be grappled with.
Exactly.
And I think that particularly people that don't understand a lot about the technology and where it's heading, there's quite some concerns about that.
I agree. I totally am with you. We've seen so many aspects where, commercial organizations obviously, come over and take over that aspect of it. And we give away too much, at times. And we've really got to be in more control and aware of what we share and where we share it. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So there are various examples of the brain-computer interface. Here's a quick example of one for sleep, actually, and I've got it right here, which is called Sleep Shepherd, and it helps you. It's got a comprehensive sleep lab, and it helps you as a smart alarm clock to wake you up to your natural body clock. So it measures with your brain waves, your alpha, beta, delta, gamma waves, different aspects of sleep, your awake stage, your REM sleep stage, deep sleep stage, and all, for example. And it's got a very detailed lab of understanding there. Sleep is very critical, as we all know, for cognitive function and essential for learning, for creativity, and even problem solving. So there's a lot of potential for, measuring sleep and improving it. Another one is very interesting, called Life by SmartCap. And, we have over 1.2 million accidents that happen because of human error. And majority of those are because of fatigue and stress. So what this does is actually measures your fatigue levels using your brain waves again. And it provides a very simple score if you want to take the driver, so be it a truck driver or something who you want to take off the road for the organization to a fleet, for example. And, you can really save a lot of lives with that, and especially other resources. Yeah. Another great Aussie startup in this space called Emotive, which has recently launched a device called Emanate. And I talk about that also in the toolkit, so can refer to that to people. And they've done some really interesting work with facial expression and emotion detection, and a lot more multi-channel EEG sensors that they have. So the one I mentioned quickly earlier was the Muse, and Muse is a personal meditation assistant, really. It helps you with getting calm and relaxed with your feedback on your mind and body. And it's been, it's got some really interesting apps and to sort of take you through that routine in that space. And they recently launched this, new product, the Muse S band, which is more a fabric-based smart band, which you see on the right here. So we're really tapping that state of our mind a lot deeper with the various brainwaves. And I was actually involved with setting up a lab. This was about 10 years ago now, called iZone, which was like a thinking lab of the future, where we were kind of experimenting with how brainwaves and how we could do innovation workshops and do ideation sessions and really build a lot more deeper ability to come up with more breakthrough ideas. So it was very interesting to quantify that sort of aspect and play with some parameters on that area. And there are already tools now, like NeuroSky has launched something called Effective Learner. So this is for classrooms, for learning, and for a study trainer. So you can actually monitor students and see how effectively they've been learning. And here's an example of some of their screenshots and so forth on how we can actually look at aspects of when they're most effective in really getting the right information and processing it. So quite powerful sort of areas there. So what I'd been talking earlier was more about reading your brain. And now this is a new space which is called brain stimulation, where you're actually even writing to the brain. There's a lot of research happening in this space. So it's called transcranial brain stimulation. And a startup that I was mentoring at a remarkable accelerator called Numbre, which is later called NCAP Neuroscience, by this amazing Peter Simpson-Young from Sydney Uni, who's been doing a PhD in this space. And we're looking at how do we tackle people with disability to really, come back, bring their motor skills back, for example. So you're able to inject, a low current through your brain to retap and reconnect those neurons. It's really phenomenal what we can do there in this space of creating that mind of the future. And to that effect, over about 3 years ago now, Elon Musk formulated this company called Neuralink, which has been doing some deep research in this space in tapping and looking at improving motor skills and rehab, looking at brain function, and really what they've done is actually 100th the size of the human hair, 1,000 fibers on your, basically on your brain, on the surface of your skull, being able to inject and bring that together as a means to write and to go much deeper. So they've done some phenomenal work really in this, and there's new things going to be launched and announced by Neuralink. So watch that space. And I think really that technology is moving so fast that it's become indistinguishable from magic.
Mm.
And in fact, there is one product already in this space for writing to your brain, and it's called Halo 2. In fact, I have it right here. I've already been playing with it for a while. I even featured it on our fashion show. So it's actually helping you with, improving your brain performance, optimizing, and helping you with do certain skills, and brings your brain to a hyper learning and a stage for positively influencing your neuroplasticity. So imagine if you were wanting to learn music or you regain an old skill, it helps you actually do it much faster because it's triggering those neurons in your brain to do that.
Fantastic. Absolutely fascinating. If
Yeah.
you are listening as we're going along right now, Anuraj is going to take some questions. So any questions that you have, please put straight into the Q&A or into the feed on Facebook Live, either way. And do you want to unshare your screen now so we can just have...
Oh, okay, yeah, sure. Or should I go through some more slides? Because if
Oh, sorry, I thought you'd finished. I'm just...
Oh, no, I haven't finished yet, actually. Sorry, yeah. Actually, I have probably a fair bit more. I'm just going to jump into my next section then.
You've only got a couple more minutes, so
yeah.
Probably one of the main ones. Highlight slides are, and finish off with those for us.
Right, okay. So this one is called Heart Math, actually, which is really about hacking, heart intelligence into your consciousness. And it's a very powerful device. In fact, I was with the founders of these folks in Boulder Creek in California early this year. And I would highly recommend, because it's all about heart coherence and your inner balance, that it helps you work with through, heart rate variability. So it helps release stress, find balance, and really build resilience. And it's something which I actually, we talk about B2B or B2C. It's something which I say connecting H to H or heart to heart. And I think that's what Heart Math has been really uh, powerful in sort of doing that. I'll just skip through the. So sort of we've seen a lot of things happen in the wellness space and similarly in spirituality. But I wanted to go deeper a little bit into spirituality. I know we have lack of time, but it's something which talk about moving from the physical to the intelligence to the emotional to the spiritual quotient, and how we sort of can build that much further. Even a conversation I had with Steve Jobs a long time back was on spirituality on his actually trip to India with his friend Kotke in April of 1974. And he really followed Buddhism, Zen Buddhism also to quite an extent. And one of his favorite books was this one called The Autobiography of a Yogi by Swami Paramahansa Yogananda. And I think it's really interesting because for me, that journey of technology and spirituality has been probably a very deep one. And I've sort of followed that through in looking at the stage of balance, looking at how do we reduce stress, which has really become a slow poison, and going beyond all our five senses with technology. And we came up with a concept called the Zen mobile device. I talk about this in my toolkit so people can read a bit more about it, but it's really based around music, on haptics, and how we can enter something. And it's something which I actually ended up presenting to His Holiness Dalai Lama. Said it's not about switching off your mobile phone. It's like how we have aircraft mode, flipping it into something called the bliss mode. And that's something which I presented to him 12 years ago now, through a vision of my own, what we call the MTP, or massively transforming purpose, in there. And I've got that on the screen there. I won't read it out because I just thought I'll just finish up quickly. I know because we need to start wrapping up. So yeah, it's really difficult to find happiness within ourselves, but it's impossible to find it anywhere else. And I think that's where I found this really amazing thing which came up recently in WhatsApp, that if you can't go outside, you go inside. And I think my colleague already covered a fair bit of, using on transhumanism, which is really so related to this topic. And I think we're seeing this top skills of the fourth industrial revolution, which are really phenomenal. We've actually got a means to map, even on your brain, various skills like empathy, creativity, using brainwave sensors. So there's a lot of research and work happening in this space. And I think this topic of creative intelligence is where we move from user experience to user engagement, consumer to community, and so forth. Different sort of aspects from building our own ikigai, which is the purpose of being. And there's a couple of interesting books, obviously people would have read. The Secret, and a friend of mine is launching this book very soon, in next month, in 9th of June actually, called Serendipity Mindset. And it's moving from the old VUCA. So I just wanted to wrap up soon with this, saying we need to move into that new phase of the new VUCA, which is vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. And it's something which I've been working on as a blue zone, because I was actually there in Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica early this year. And I just found it so phenomenal connecting with nature, because these blue zones around the world are so inspiring that we can gain so much about going back to nature and really learning, because I've had my own journey on looking at sacred sites, looking at something I started as a bushwalk, as a walk the Exponential Thought Leaders bushwalk, and a concept that I've been building called White Mirror, which is just a holding name. I'm sure, have you seen this Netflix series called Black Mirror?
No, I haven't, no.
Okay, it's really talking about a great, powerful future, but unfortunately it's dystopian. And I sort of flipped the model into a much more utopian, positive sort of future. And there are many facets to it. So I'd actually published something on LinkedIn regarding this. So again, I would send you the link of that. Happy for people to comment on it and look at it. And it's really co-creating it with everybody. The concept of this very utopian and strong, positive future that we can look forward to. I'll skip through a couple of these slides. I'll just end now with maybe one quick mention of an entity that I was involved with at the World Economic Forum this year that we created, called the Wisdom Health. And it's a global community of conscious leadership. And I can sort of mention more about that again on the website for SuperHuman. But I'll probably end with this slide saying that the most exciting breakthroughs will not occur because of technology, but because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human.
Absolutely.
So yeah, sorry, I had to race through some of that. I probably have more stuff, but I think let's get to some more Q&A.
You know what I was thinking when you had to race through the last few slides? I wish you started at the end, at the last slide, and gone to the beginning.
I know, I know. I'm sure there'll be other occasions then in the future. But
I'm sure there will. I think
yeah,
next time we'll really focus and niche you to be
yeah,
talking about spirituality and tech
sure.
specifically, because I think that that's a really, really juicy topic for people to
Yeah,
get into.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
Fantastic. Well, all I can say is a massive thank you to you. That was on fast forward, lots of information and
Sure.
super insightful
Yeah,
and useful. And we do have one question, so we won't be taking any more than just this one
sure.
question.
Yep.
And this one question is, someone's asking, out of all of those different devices, if you just had to get one, which one would it be?
Oh my God, that's a very hard question now. It's such a combination of so many things. And I'm actually working on some new, with some startups, in fact, entity of combining heart rate variability, which say, with a wrist-one device or with an ear-based device, with EEG, with brainwaves, and combining it with, say, galvanic skin response to look at your intuition and how we can improve that much further.
So what you're saying is don't buy any of them, wait until that one's
Wait
developed.
till that one, yeah, but I mean, for now, something close to my heart is, I would say, heart math in a balance.
Heart math, yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
I'm sure people
And
have
if
heard.
anyone doesn't know about heart math, it is a really fascinating initiative, project, organization that does quite extensive work across the globe. And there's lots of people involved in it. But one of the other authors that we've talked about on earlier conversations, Greg Braden, is
Yeah.
very much involved with heart math. So
Good.
it is worth you going to check out some more information if you're into that kind of thing. So any last words of wisdom for us, Anuraj?
Well, I think it's just stay positive, experiment. Just keep on. I would say it's such an exciting time to rethink, to take a pause, and to move forward with a much stronger quantified self that you can generate from all this time that we have, and to come up with a much higher level of super consciousness that we can build for everybody.
Absolutely. Make this count towards super consciousness.
Yes.
Fantastic. So if you are around again in another 5 or 10 minutes, starting at 1 o'clock, we have Michelle Crone, and she's going to be talking about humanity. And that talk and the rest of this afternoon is going to be facilitated by AJ. So I'm off for the day. So thank you so much for joining us this morning. And again, a massive thank you to you, Anuraj, for all your time and energy, and for you definitely winning the prize about packing the most slides into one presentation.
Thank you, Michelle. I appreciate that.
Okay, take care.
Okay.
And feel free to drop all of those links that we talked about inside the Facebook group. That would be
I'll do
awesome.
that. I'll do that.
Okay, thank you. See
Great.
ya.
Thank you. Bye-bye.